Diva is finally getting buffed, and also we've got a response, a very detailed response of Josh Noah, one of the devs for the balance team, on the effect of power creep in Overwatch. Okay, before we get stuck into that, because there are some very enlightening things that he says and things we really need to talk about. We're going to talk about this. This is the Diva Buff. Now, this is what Josh Noah says. Yeah, we've actually been playtesting a booster cooldown reduction recently. It sounded kind of intimidating on paper, tested a 3-second cooldown first, but in practice hasn't been that crazy, and allows Diva to play the midfield more freely, which works well with the current 10-meter defense matrix range. Some versions should make it to the next PTR cycle. Now, we're hoping the next PTR has this Diva buff and has the Baptiste immortality field nerf. The only kind of concern with Diva here is maybe she'll be able to infinitely fly. I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about power creep, because there's no power creep in Overwatch. I'm going to submit some evidence to you guys. The first is Exhibit A, Sigma. Exhibit B, May, multi-freeze. Exhibit C is our lovely Hanzo with storm arrows. Exhibit D, no, it's actually E. A, B, C, D. No, it's D. I'm a retard. Immortality field. Yeah, my brain has been destroyed by what I have read on the internet, ladies and gentlemen. So, Josh Noah is getting absolutely obliterated right now because of what he said on the forums about the balance of Overwatch. And a lot of pros, a lot of high-level players are coming out saying, what are you talking about? This is absolute drivel. It makes no sense. Now, we're going to try and break this down and try and work this out, because one thing we don't want to do is just straight up slam the devs, because then they won't post anymore. We were in a period here of actually very minimal communication from the devs, and it's really disheartening that we've got that. So it's good to see that they're starting to comment again. And Josh, if you guys remember last year, did comment on Blizzard's balance philosophy, which was an awesome post to see. Anyway, he's back with what looks like a little bit of a innocuous post, but obviously the devs know when they post on the forums, it's going to very quickly be disseminated around the Overwatch community, and everybody's going to try and look at what's going on. So I know you guys have been looking at a big post on the screen. I'm going to leave this on the screen because we've got to discuss what is being said in this post, and we need to try and work out what is going on. So, Josh drops into a thread where they're talking about power creep. Now, power creep has been a topic in Overwatch for a while, and it's essentially the idea of heroes getting more and more powerful, especially new heroes, or heroes being buffed with so much power that they just replace other heroes, and then older heroes are kind of left out in the dust. Heroes like Soldier, heroes like Genji. Why play them when you can play a super buffed Hanzo, or a super buffed Reaper, or even a Mei, or even a Doomfist? In the tank department, why would you play any other tank apart from Sigma and Orisa? They're basically the best tanks right now, and they're just better than all the other tanks at getting value. That's not to say that they don't get wins. The other tanks will get wins and all of that stuff. Anyway, let's get stuck into this. So, this is what Josh says. Dropping by with a fun fact. Looking at GM players for the current patch 1.43, Genji and Soldier 76 are 6 and 7 in terms of win rate for damage heroes out of 16 total. I read this and I'm like, excuse me? Now, this is just looking at Grandmaster. So you guys know Grandmaster is like the absolute top of the ladder. Under 1% of the player base is there. So why does that matter to everybody else? But for him to say, oh yeah, they're actually doing pretty well, 6th and 7th for damage heroes out of all the selections, that's great, right? Okay. So then he goes on to say, they're not doing quite as poorly as the general community sentiment would imply. Game balance perceptions and opinions are often repeated and perpetuated enough that they start to become accepted as fact by many players. So this is the idea of people, most likely like me, spreading misinformation, presumably, about... you guys remember the Baptiste Soldier comparison with the barrier breaking potential, where Baptiste has more barrier breaking potential than Soldier, which is slightly mad because he's a support. Surely no support should have that kind of DPS output. Now, granted, in a game, Baptiste is not just shooting the enemy team. He should be healing his team, so he's not doing full-on damage. So theoretically, Soldier will do more damage because he's just constantly firing at the enemy. But obviously, the fact that Baptiste has got that much power is an example of power creep. A support that can do that much is quite frankly a bit mad, right? Anyway, let's go on. We should also remember that things like win rates and hero power effectiveness can fluctuate significantly depending on the player's skill level. If someone complains that Reaper is too strong and another says that Reaper is too weak, they could both be correct for their current skill level. Now, what's crazy about this, guys, is Reaper is a god at every skill level. Reaper is fantastically good throughout the lower levels of the ladder. Any of you guys playing in Platinum below, you will know Reaper will just delete the enemy team. This is because Reaper got super buffed to counter Goat's meta, which is no longer a thing. This means Reaper can teleport faster, he can teleport while he jumps. It doesn't make as much noise when he teleports, so he can get behind you without you knowing. But the big one is, Reaper has got more lifesteal, so this let him contend more in a big tank brawl when there was Goat's meta. But then we got 2-2-2, and there's no longer Goat's meta. You can't play 4 tanks, or 3 tanks, 4 tanks. You can't play them. Simply because, well, there's a roller. Get what I'm saying, guys? So that's an example of power creep. So to use Reaper as an example here is very weird, because Reaper's effective at the high level as well. Reaper's effective, like, you know, he's effective in Master, he's effective in GM, he's effective all over the place. It is quite ridiculous. Also, to jump back onto some of these points here about win rates, that win rate is something you work out based on the number of games that are played and the number of wins that result based off the number of games, and that gives you the win rate percentage. So if you play 10 games and you win 5 games, then you've got a 50% win rate on that hero. Now, Blizzard obviously have got the statistics all over the ladder and the game. So when they say things like, yes, Soldier 76 and Genji are 6 and 7 in terms of win rate in GM, that means they're fine. That does not mean they're fine, because how many games are being played there? What are these win rate statistics based off? If Hanzo, and I'm telling you guys right now, in fact, if you guys look at the top 500 for damage, look at the heroes that are being played, it's not Soldier. I can tell you that for free. It's Doomfist, it's Mei, it's Hanzo. These are the best heroes for value. They are the most power creeped heroes. They are the most effective at everything that they do compared to other heroes. We go back to looking at the idea of value based on hero selection. Why would you select Soldier 76, who has very minimal kill securing potential? He's got great sustained damage output when he's just firing away, yeah, but there's a lot of stuff in the game that stop him getting the kill, or he cannot do damage fast enough to secure the kill, whereas a McCree would do that better, and Ashe would just do that better than Soldier. So he's left in the scenario of like, well, why would you play me? There are 2 heroes who are objectively simply better than me, and you could also throw in Widow. This is, of course, if we stay looking at hit scan heroes. My argument to this, again, would be just drop the Soldier and play Hanzo, because you can still spam damage across, but then you've also got the chance of getting the kill, because you land a headshot on a squishy target. Or you do significant damage that is very difficult to be out-healed. Of course, then enters Baptiste with his immortality field, and then nobody dies. Again, another example of power creep. So for them to say there is no power creep is a bit weird, but we'll get onto that in a second. But you guys can see where I'm coming from here. It's very weird to use Genji and Soldier as an example at GM as being really good picks when there is no way those heroes are played more than any of the meta DPS right now. And they're only meta DPS because they suffer from severe power creep. You get what I'm saying, guys? All right, let's move on. So Josh then goes on to say, when making balance changes, we typically look at the high-end potential of player skill for a hero, but also try to keep in mind if a given change would be a significant detriment to the overall gameplay experience in lower skill brackets, and attempt to find a better solution if so. So throughout this post, what he's saying is, look, we have to balance for the high end, we have to balance for the low end and the middle. We can't just make a change because all of the vocal players, which most of the time, vocal players, you know, like myself, like all of the pros, we're not playing in Platinum, we're not playing in Gold where most players play. We are playing in Master, we're playing in GM, we're playing in Top 500. This is like a different world, so often our view can kind of be skewed. My get out clause to all of this has often been, well, you know, I make Overanalyzed, and Overanalyzed does have a lot of, I get to see a lot of gameplay from all over the ladder, and I see certain trends happening. Now, of course, I don't have access to the information Blizzard have got. You can go to websites like Overbuff, which are not entirely very accurate, but it's the only information we've got simply because Blizzard doesn't give access to their database to anybody. So you can't really work out how many games are being played and all that stuff. And of course, this is probably for business reasons, because they don't want people to work out somehow how many active players they've got, because no doubt that would be probably detriment to the game and not very good for the shareholders. Anyway, let's move on here, because this is the last paragraph, and this is the kind of interesting bit. And it says, I think in general, being wary of extreme power creep is a valid and healthy concern if it's causing gameplay to become too wildly distorted from the core experience. I don't feel that we're currently anywhere close to that with a live game. And I think that's what triggered everybody, because I'm going to read this again. I think in general, being wary of extreme power creep is a valid and healthy concern if it's causing gameplay to become too wildly distorted from the core experience. Now, what is the core experience of Overwatch? I'll tell you guys what the core experience of Overwatch is. It is the idea of swapping to counter the enemy team. Or at least that's what it used to be. That is not the case anymore, and that has not been the case for years. You cannot swap to counter the enemy team when swapping to counter the enemy team is literally playing the enemy's comp if the enemy are rolling the meta comp. That is the big problem with Overwatch, yeah? And this just comes back to, Sty, what is the ideal comp right now? And it's very simple. It's Orisa. It's Sigma. Okay, we know that. It's Mei. It's Hanzo. It's Baptiste. It's insert some other support. That's what the comp is. And if you're not running that, you will suffer. If your team doesn't have a Baptiste, you will suffer if the enemy team has one, because Baptiste can simply press one button, which again is a very clear and evident example of power creep, which will deny a lot of abilities from the enemy team. It will deny skillful plays. It will deny a lot of stuff, denies ultimates, and it is one standard ability. That is mental. Not to mention the rest of his kit, high damage output for a support, which they also buffed, remember, because they removed the spread on his weapon. He's got AoE heals, he's got a fantastic ultimate, he's got all of this stuff. He's got a jump, which arguably Soldier should probably have, right? Probably make him a bit more viable. He is just the quintessential example of power creep. But then you've got heroes like Sigma, heroes like Orisa. In fact, all of the heroes that I've listed in this meta comp are all power creep heroes. You could throw in Reaper, you could throw in Doomfist as well. All of them are very strong, and they've been put in that place by Blizzard. And what's worrying, I think, for the Overwatch community when they read stuff like this is, are Blizzard out of touch with what the game is actually like? Do they rely too much on data sets? Do they rely too much on like, oh, well, you will see that Genji and Soldier are actually pretty good in GM because I've looked at a graph. Maybe. But then how many games of Hanzo, how many games of Mei, how many games of Doomfist played in GM compared to Soldier and Genji? Now, maybe they could come out with stats and slap us straight in the face and go, well, look at this. Loads of people are playing Soldier and Genji. And then we'd be like, what the hell? You know what? Then, yeah, sure, irrefutable evidence. But we don't see that, not at the moment. And it's just baffling that we see these kind of comments from the devs. Now, one thing I do want to say is it is great that the devs do this, because you have to instigate discussion to further the development of the game. And I think this is more of the modern era of game development, where you do have a lot of people who are very vocally invested in your game. You have people like myself, you have people like all the pros, everybody, like, you know, anybody out there who's making content on the game, who's active in the community. We're very hardcore fans of the game, and we are a resource of information. And I know for a fact that Blizzard will look at us and be like, hey, what is the community talking about? Is this worthwhile looking at, or are they talking crap? Who knows? They will do stuff like that. But the problem is, I think we need these communication avenues to stay open. I'm a YouTuber, right? I'm a content creator. I've suffered my fair share of negative comments. And I'm just one guy. I'm not a company. I'm not somebody who has massive banks of resources to lean back on. And if, like, you know, I'm prepared to deal with that, then developers that come out into the open and start commenting on the game should also probably be prepared to deal with that. And they should look at the feedback for what it is, and it's really good feedback, even if it might be passionate, even if it might be, what the hell are you guys talking about? You know, I've seen loads of hot takes from well-respected professional players on Twitter before I made this video, and yeah, they are passionate, but that's the whole point. You know, they're passionate about the game, we're passionate about the game, and we want to see the game succeed. All right, guys, this has been a very interesting video. More posts like this, please, devs, especially Josh, who seems to be potentially the lead balance developer now. I don't know, but he just seemed very active when it comes to talking about game balance and all of that good stuff, which is awesome to see. But yeah, guys, let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Very interesting time for Overwatch, and yeah, I guess we're gonna have to wait and see what's on this PTR, which hopefully will go live maybe this week, which would mean tomorrow, and could be a huge PTR for the game. Catch you guys in the next one. Toodaloo.